What's up, warriors? It's Kyoshi Dave Herman with 5 Elements Tactical Training, here to share with you some warrior skills and drills that anyone can learn and everyone should know. If you're new to the channel, welcome and thanks for stopping by. If you already follow us on social media and that's how you found your way over to this channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification button, and YouTube will let you know when the next video drops. Alright, so this video is all about the 5 W's of wilderness survival. When we talk about wilderness survival, it doesn't have to be like surviving in the wilderness, although that's what it's for. It could be on your next camping trip or hiking trip or backpacking trip or whatever. Even on a regular camping trip at campgrounds with a campsite. Before you figure out where exactly on that campsite you're going to put your tent down, you take these 5 W's into consideration. So the first W is wind. So before you set up your tent or your tarp or lean-to shelter or start laying wood down and building a teepee or something like that, you want to try and get a general idea of which way the wind is going. Remember that the wind can change almost at any time, but get an idea of which way the wind is going for several reasons. Especially if it's cold out and the wind is bringing cold air or rain or snow or sleet, and we're trying to maintain our body's core temperature. You don't want your shelter pointed in such a way that the wind is kind of blowing in or blowing through, and no matter what you do, you can't get warm or stay warm. In the summertime, a nice cool breeze coming through is nice, but if you put your tent and then your fire where it's going to be blowing smoke into your tent or into your shelter, that's no good either. So some of the things that you need to kind of pay attention to before you even get started are where the wind is blowing, where the wind is going, and where you're going to be in relation to it. Another thing to consider is not just the wind, but the temperature. If you're going to be camping on a hillside or mountainside where cold air drops, so you don't want to be down at the bottom where, you know, at night when the temperature drops down, it's going to be really cold. And you may not want to be up on top where there's not much protection from the wind. So finding a good spot right in the middle is usually your best bet. And then within that spot, trying to find, you know, trees or things that could block you from the wind. Or flat ground where you could figure out, if I turn my tent or shelter or whatever in this direction, I have good protection on as many sides from the wind as possible. And then you could use it to your advantage instead of having it used against you. The next W to consider is water. And in water, we got to think of it in 2 ways. The first one is, are you going to be setting up your shelter in a spot where water is going to come passing through it or collect in it? Like if you kind of scout your campground or wherever you're going to be setting up camp, you're looking for highs and lows that if there was like heavy rain, is the runoff, the rundown when, you know, it's going to go downhill. So is the door to your tent facing uphill, you're going to wake up to, you know, a bunch of water or be floating in water or be, you know, open up your tent into a huge puddle of water. So one of the things you got to do is you kind of look for like dents in the ground and high points on the ground, and they can be very, very subtle. It's not like, you know, something that's really obvious. Sometimes you're going to feel it with your feet more than anything else. So when you're looking at your campsite or where you're thinking about setting up, you want to make sure that water is not going to run through or collect around the spot you're looking at. And the second thing to take into consideration when you're thinking about water and selecting your spot is, how close are you to water? So if you're on a camping trip and you have one of them 5-gallon Home Depot jugs with you filled with water and you're only going for a couple days, well, you're good to go. Or you got a big Camelback on your back and you got more than enough water than you're going to need for the next day or so, or whatever it is, you're good to go. But if you needed to get water for cooking, for cleaning, for drinking and staying hydrated, it's not going to be a Brita water filter in the woods. But finding a good source of clean, fresh water that you could take from a river or a stream or whatever and then boil it to purify it and drink it. You want to make sure that you're in a good proximity to that without being in a spot where you're going to get drowned out if rain came and overflows the river or whatever. So one, you're trying to find a spot where it's not going to like flow through where you are or collect around where you are. And you also want to be kind of close in the event that you needed water, that it's one of your keys to survival. You can go a long time without a lot of other things. Water's not one of them. The next W is Widowmakers. So Widowmakers are, you have all these really tall trees all around, right? And some of them look like they're in plenty good condition, or that looks alive enough to me, but a strong wind comes by, or your day is the day that thing decides to crack or split, or the one branch falls off, or some, you know, animals up there climbing around, puts too much weight on one end and leverage makes that sucker snap. You don't want to have your tent or your shelter beneath that. So one of the things you got to really pay attention to when you're looking is not just the ground and not just the elevation, all that stuff, but it's looking up to take a look around. If it looks like there's a lot of dead trees around, that's not the spot for you. Try to figure out how long those branches are, and if it fell straight down, would you want to be under it? Sometimes you may have a spot that looks like a great campsite, and you look up and that's the deal breaker. I don't know, but when I look around and I'm looking for wood to make a campfire, you find some crazy big branches that fell, and you're like, oh my God, that's a Widowmaker right there for sure. If that landed on you, that'd be a really, really bad day, especially if you're out here by yourself. Who's going to come get you? You got to come get you. So the best way to do it is make sure you look up, you look around, and avoid the Widowmakers. All right, so the next W is wood. So again, going back to maintaining your core body temperature, having a means to boil or purify water, making sure you have a means to cook food or cook up any fish or anything that you happen to catch, you need a fire. So fire, we need it for, light and heat and warmth and morale and all that type of stuff. So you have to take a look around. Is wood, like sufficient amount of wood to get you through whatever duration of time you're going to be like holed up in that spot? Is there enough wood around to get a fire going and keep a fire going? So when you look around, you're looking for smalls, right? Is there like, every time you walk around and you hear that crackle under your feet, that's oftentimes those are your smalls. The dry leaves, that sticks and hay and grass and stuff that's, about the thickness of the lead of a pencil. So not the yellow part, but the black part in the middle that makes you able to write on paper. So you're looking for that stuff to get a fire started. That's your tinder source. Then you need kindling, which is the next thing up, which is going to be your, like the thickness of either your fingers or the pencil itself. And of course, man, if you could find that stuff. But you also want to make sure that you could find the fuel. So you probably have like tinder and kindling in your backyard, wherever you go to the park. You'll find that stuff laying around all over the place. The more rural you are, the easier. The more urban, the more challenging, but you'll find it. Fuel is the challenge. To be able to put logs on a fire that'll go for long enough, give off enough heat, both to like keep you warm, close enough to the fire, but not too close to the fire, and to go for a while, like to stay up all night and just keep feeding the fire. That's draining. You can't keep that pace going. So you want to find the stuff to get the fire started, to build the fire up, and then to keep it going. The fourth W is wood. And the last W is wildlife. So from a skunk to a raccoon to a bear, or wolves and coyotes or cougars or wherever you're camping, have an idea of your proximity or the presence of wildlife. Some of it's cute in nature until it's, climbing through your tent or rummaging through your food or your pack while you're in your tent or in your shelter and you hear your stuff, and it could be a real mess. So, or it could be tragic. If you're real close to bears, house. I think of the 3 little bears. I told my kids I'm going out on a solo overnight thing, and they freaked out because one of the last things we read was Goldilocks, and they're thinking about the 3 bears eating daddy. But there's some validity to that. So you got to be careful of wildlife when you're selecting your spot close to water. You don't want to be so close to water that you're not the only one going down there for water. If you see paths that it's not from people and it's not from an ATV or it's not from a pedestrian, whatever, that's something that's going to be one of your clues on what kind of wildlife is walking around. Big path, big animal. Also, signs of claw marks on trees, and scat is the wildlife word for poo. Big poo, big animal. Little poo, little animal. And you got to kind of pick and choose which thing you're willing to deal with in the middle of the night. God forbid. The 5th W is wildlife. All right, so quick review. The 5 W's of wilderness survival are wind, water, Widowmakers, wood, wildlife. Write them down, share them, pass them on, whatever. Just make sure you remember to think about them next time you head off out into the woods. Even just for a little while, man. It's a good habit to get into, is how to look for those things and spot them before you're out there under duress and like scared or freaking out or whatever, or it's dark and you're trying to figure that stuff out. So make it a habit, just like situational awareness that we talk about when we're doing our self-defense and firearms training and active shooter, all that other stuff, man. All the time, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you're a warrior. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Good situational awareness, all right? Well, if you made it this far and you like what I'm teaching and preaching, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and like this video. If you're loving it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you gotta have it, make sure you hit the bell notification button so YouTube will let you know when the next video drops. If you're really digging it and you want more, you can find us on all social media platforms at 5 Elements Tactical. Well, that's all I got for now, warriors. So until our paths cross again, pray for the best, prepare for the rest. I'm Kyoshi Dave Herman with 5 Elements Tactical Training. Thanks for watching.